Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to wait a minute or two to let everyone log in before we get started. Where is everyone tuning in from? Feel free to respond in the chat. Seattle, Asheville, Minneapolis, Richmond. Hey, Sarah. Ballard. Hey, Janae. West Seattle. Snoqualmie. Florida. Hey, Florida. Okay, wait for another minute and then we'll jump right in. Okay. All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Polina Chesnakova. I am Booklarder staff, and I'm also the author of Hot Cheese, which qualifies me to be today's interviewer. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Booklarder, we are a cookbook store in the Fremont neighborhood of Seattle. Typically, we host all sorts of events like author talks like this one, and cooking classes and cookbook clubs in the store. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that with COVID and have transitioned completely online. And although it's not the same, it's been really neat to be able to host people from all over the country, all over the world, both as attendees and authors. So that's been really neat. Today we are talking with Joe Berkowitz to celebrate his new book, American Cheese. Joe is a pop culture journalist who had a sort of come to Jesus moment / lightning bolt moment with a certain wedge of blue that inspired him to go down the rabbit hole that is the artisan world of cheese, and eventually inspired him to write a whole book about that journey. For those of you who don't have a copy of the book yet, we are selling it at Booklarder. I copy and pasted the link to our website at the top of our chat sidebar. Joe and I will be talking for about 45 minutes, and we'll save the last 10 to 15 minutes for any questions from the audience. If you have any questions for Joe at any point of the chat, there is a Q&A sidebar at the bottom of your screen. Please type your questions into that sidebar and not the chat. It will help me keep organized and make sure that I get to everyone's questions. And of course, if you want to come back to this or you have to leave a bit early, we are recording the author talk and we'll be posting it on our Booklarder YouTube channel that usually will go up within the next 48 hours. All right, well, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Joe Berkowitz.
I can talk. I can see.
Hey, Joe. How are you doing?
Hi. I'm doing pretty good, thanks. How about yourself?
Good. Ready to talk about American cheese.
Let's do it.
You know, I said it before we started, but I wanted to congratulate you on such a fun and hilarious and insightful book. And I really do think it is something that will interest both folks that aren't super familiar with cheese and the whole artisan world side of it, and also people who are already in the cheese industry. So congratulations.
Thank you. That was very much a goal. I really wanted to hit people who were just like me at the beginning of the book and liked cheese a lot but didn't know anything about it. And I wanted people who knew everything about cheese to still be able to enjoy it too, and possibly learn something by seeing it through a newcomer's perspective. I don't know, but that's really nice to hear. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I actually wanted to start our conversation by reading an excerpt from the beginning of the book. Let's see. The version of me who was enchanted by Pepper Jack is now dead. It's not that I no longer eat anything less than the world's finest cheese at all times. It's that I can't pretend not to be aware of it. That's the thing about cheese snobbery. Once you've opened Pandora's pantry, it remains open. You might as well try putting Cheese Whiz back in the can. I will never again eat an omelet without knowing how amazing Gruyere de la Page would taste slowly sinking into it, like a fluffed bedsheet collapsing onto a pillowy pile of eggs. I have a hard time looking at green cylinder Parmesan, the scentless sawdust inside practically mocking Giorgio Cravero's Parmigiano Reggiano, a cheese comprised entirely of guitar solos. I can't eat a grilled cheese sandwich without wishing molten cloth-bound cheddar were in the middle, maybe with some Roquefort mixed in too, for contrast and spice. Once you know about knee-buckling cheese, you can't unknow it. You can try to ignore its salty siren song, but your taste buds won't let you forget it. Why would anyone ever want to forget cheese?
Why indeed?
Yeah, and with that, I have a little surprise here. It is a small, not so humble wedge of Rogue River Blue. For those who haven't read the book, spoiler alert, it is the cheese that started it all for Joe. And I was wondering, Joe, if you can speak a little bit about that moment for you and how it led you to, go on this journey and eventually write the book.
Well, it was a night of tasting amazing cheeses all together. It was Valentine's Day 2018, and I was there with my wife, Gabi, and I think just hearing them talk about cheeses throughout the night and hearing the process and how much has to go right in order for the cheese to taste the way it does, I'd already been like more than intrigued. I was just really thinking about this whole world that I hadn't been to before, thought about much. And then the taste of Rogue River Blue was just nothing like a blue cheese had ever tasted before to me, or any cheese really. It was just so different. The description I settled on in the book is it tasted like Fruity Pebbles cereal milk, but fermented into fudge or something like that. And yeah, it just tasted so different. And I wanted to show it off to people. I was like, everyone should know what this tastes like. And so I didn't immediately think that's it, writing a cheese book, that's the only thing that can happen now, but it was like the first step that led to it. And I didn't write this in the book because it would be pretty, I don't know, too much of a peek behind the curtain, I guess, but right. I was looking for a new topic for a book anyway. So, it was pointing in that direction, but I didn't like taste it and say, that's it, this is a book.
Yeah. And how did, once and like you said, you were looking for a topic, and once you kind of had that experience with the Rogue River Blue, how did you, American cheese, on one hand, you read it and the image that immediately comes to mind is, a craft single. But as you found out that as you start to explore American cheese, the world of artisan cheese is so expansive and nuanced, and clearly you cover so many facets of it in the book. But how did you even go about just planning that year Did it kind of,
Oh my
did a
God.
lot of your experiences come organically, or?
Well, first it was just, I suspected that there was a book here, and then I started just doing the cursory research and being, like, okay, I could go into, the farming side, and I can go into affinage, and I can just go into like types of cheese and things like that. I just realized there was enough content there, and there was enough, veins to mine. And that, so all I had to do was just like scam HarperCollins into letting me do a cheese book. And then once that scam was complete,
Incredible.
yeah, once they're like, okay, we're gonna pay you to eat cheese for at least a year, then I started to meet people, and that was how the path kind of cohered. The first person I met, and just a crucial person for the book, was Adam Moskowitz, who he runs Columbia Cheese, cheese importers, and but he also, more importantly, he's been a huge champion of the cheesemonger's role in America. And he started a competition, the Cheesemonger Invitational, which, in addition to being this very rare and amazing space where mongers like show off their specialized skills in front of an audience, like an audience finally gets to see beyond like the people that they just do it for every day. Beyond that, it's also like this congregation where people who are in the industry or just big fans, or just have a toe in that world somehow, all hang out and get together. So yeah, hanging out with Adam, and going to these events, and once you ask someone, who are the people in the cheese world I have to talk to, and they give you a few names, you talk to them and they give you a few names. And so yeah, like the travel schedule, that was evolving, but it didn't take too long to see who the major people I had to talk with were, and what some of the major events I had to, I was basically at first trying to find, what is the cheese calendar? Like, what does the year look like? And so after that, yeah, I started going to events, and at a certain point I heard that, like, oh yeah, a question I would ask everybody is, if you could go anywhere in the world for cheese, where would it be? And so many people kept saying Cheese and Bra, which is this like the world's biggest cheese festival. The entire village of Bra in Italy. It's for 5 days, either 3 or 5 days, I forget.
Mm-hmm.
I was only there for 2 or 3, but yeah, it's the biggest cheese festival in the world, and I just heard that I had to go to it, and I did. And then I also heard that if you're in the area, right nearby, that's when the cows come down the mountain in Switzerland for transhumance, which is a whole other conversation, which we probably shouldn't get into right now. But so then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go do that too. So it came together pretty ramshackle like that. You find out about one thing and then the next thing, and
Right.
just keep going.
Right. And I wonder, I mean, you have to ask yourself, I mean, I feel like the cheese community is super inclusive and supportive, and, are more than happy to get anyone on board with cheese. Did you, I mean, like looking back, did you feel like that sense of community kind of, permeated all of your experience as you learned?
Absolutely, yeah. I hear that things can get really spicy in the Facebook groups. In the like, there'll be like little fights here and there sometimes that get really interesting, and so I can't really speak to that because those are more specialized zones than I can go into. But everybody has each other's backs. When there are wildfires in California, people in Marin County will help people in a different county. Everybody wants everybody to do well. there is a lack of competition. At first I was like asking around, like, do people steal cheese recipes and stuff, or people like try to like come up with their version of this other kind of cheese? And there, people would tell me like, there's people are trying to make the same type of cheese, but no one's really trying to copy. There's, might be some overlap. Anyway, there isn't, oh yeah, and at the ACS, the American Cheese Society's annual conference and competition, which is like the closest thing in America, like the cheese Oscars, people aren't, it's really less competitive than I would have imagined. And a lot of people basically do it. I had no idea about this until I researched it more, but a lot of people basically enter it because not to find out if they win, but because when you enter your cheese in this competition, you get judged blindly by two different types of experts who will tell you with utter honesty what is wrong and right with your cheese. And that's just invaluable, because sometimes it can be hard to get honest feedback because you tell your friend and they're gonna like, maybe sugarcoat it a little bit. But yeah, to have like to get honest criticism blindly like that is invaluable. Drifting away a little bit here from the original question, but yeah, the cheese community is very strong and tight. They all have each other's backs, and they were also very welcoming to me and very kind.
Yeah, and I think too the beauty of cheese is that anytime you make it right, it's so unique to the time it's made and the place and all that. So it's, unless you are churning it out of a factory, no cheese is alike. Not even, the same wheel from the same batch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of the things that, before I tasted Rogue River Blue and I was like, oh my God, this is so good. Hearing them talk about those kinds of differences, the seasonality, and then also just the differences year over year. I forget which cheese it was, but one of the cheeses, I remember the instructor that first night was like, oh wow, this is a pretty potent batch. And I'm like, wait, what? Like one will be different than the other? And it makes perfect sense now, but I didn't think about that. It's like in a McDonald's world, the goal is to get everything to taste that baseline level of goodness each time. And with cheese, it's gonna taste like it's gonna taste each time. There's a standard of quality. There's quality control, but one year it might taste different than the previous year. And as people told me again and again, it's a living food, and sometimes the climate makes a difference. Yeah, you never know what's going to make a little difference here or there. But yeah, it changes constantly.
Yeah. And I know you have a slideshow for us. I don't know if that fits in to what we're talking
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to, cheese is such a visual thing. So, and then I traveled so much and I took all these pictures along the way for my own reference.
Right.
So I want to use them as much as possible. It's like having like a really fancy costume and using it one Halloween and then be like, I never get to use this again. So I'm just going to take full advantage of having an audience and show these pictures off.
Please.
Let's do it. Okay. So when I was first immersing myself in the cheese world, I just started making cheese plates a lot. And they would all look, like this. And I think I told most of my friends that this was what I was doing, that I was writing a book about cheese. But everybody else who follows me on Instagram were probably very confused why I was suddenly such a big cheese boy. Yeah, so I was buying cheese a lot, sometimes a lot at once. And this is the most cheese I ever had in my fridge right here. One day I got a shipment. I got all of these in that I ordered from Zingerman's. I had some make your own burrata from Murray's. I bought some cheese from Boxcar and Crown Finish. Right. Anyway, I counted and I realized I just happened to have 19 different kinds of cheese in my fridge.
Amazing.
Over the course of the book, I tried making cheese a bunch of times. If you ever want to appreciate what goes into making cheese, like making good cheese, get a kit and make it yourself, because it's going to taste kind of okay at best, maybe, if you do it perfectly right. And then you taste really good cheese, and the difference is just astronomical. And they have to get it very good, that good every time. In order to taste cheese more, I started a cheese tasting club, me and my friends, once a month. This is from maybe the second one, I think. And yeah, the first time we did it, I just had everybody bring a wedge, and I figured we'd just freestyle it. And it turned out to be way too much cheese to talk about. So eventually I started doing this. I would come up with a theme. In this case, cheddar. I wanted to show all the different kinds of variety within the world of cheddar. And they said that, you know, a reasonable amount, people have said, you know, like 5, 6 top cheeses at once is as good as you could do, but it usually ended up more like this, like 9 or 10. I started going to cheese events. This was the first cheese event I went to. I was invited by Madame Fromage, Maya Darlington, a awesome cheese influencer and author, and a very cool person. Oh yeah, so this would be the before, and this is what the after always looked like. These things always look like an alligator chomped out of them, because the rind will be so intact by the end of the night. Grease-stained brown paper became a very familiar sight to me over the course of the trip. Oh yeah, and I wore lederhosen and dirndl because I thought that was a costume party. It's a very, very minor plot point in the book, if you've read it already. I started going to farms. I met a lot of cows. I met some pretty cool goats. Oh yeah, here's a video of cows being milked by a robot. It's 10 seconds. Magic. We live in the future. Yeah, so I started going to creameries, and I had to wear oh yeah, I also got into a lot of aging rooms and got to eat some secret stashes of the best cheese that a cheesemaker had on hand, which was awesome. That was another thing I thought of the very first night I had that Rogue River Blue, was, do cheesemakers have secret stashes? And it's not like they have, you know, a little drawer in their desk where they have something else, or a safe or anything like that, but a lot of them do earmark, this is, you know, a personal favorite, and come back to it. It was what I found out. I could be wrong. If anyone is listening to this and does have secret stashes in a different way, please tell me about it. Oh yeah, okay, so yeah, I wore a lot of hairnets, and I wore a lot of goggles. I wore an apron because I worked at a cheese shop for a little while. I went to all kinds of weird things, like this event at South by Southwest with a cheese Ferris wheel, whatever that is. This is from an event held in a funeral parlor with a little skeleton. This is, you can't tell, this is a casket. This is a scene from backstage at the Cheesemonger Invitational. A bunch of cheesemongers racing to make their creations. This is from an international cheese competition. Yeah, see, this is an Australian cheesemonger competing there, and she's got her boomerang, and there are little Aussie animals around here somewhere. That's one of the winning entry that I got to. Part of this book research involved just flying around the world, eating cheese with my wife, and we got to go to inside the Cathedral of Parmesan at Giorgio Crivero's place. This is from the cows going down the mountain for transhumance. And yeah, I got to fly around the world eating all kinds of crazy cheese. It was a pretty wild time. Oh yeah, this is cheese that was buried in the ground. Cheese that looks like an alien. Cheese that looks like a sea creature. That's campfire, that's cheese that's melted into kind of a fondue poured over marshmallow as a weird experiment. It tasted interesting in the best possible way. Interesting is usually a euphemism for terrible. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Here's a little 45-second video, and that's the end of this. This is the world's largest cheese board, Guinness Book World Record. That's jumping rope with string cheese.
Cool.
So yeah, a lot of adventures.
It's neat to read the book and then see it all kind of come to life with that slideshow.
Imagine how I feel.
Yeah. So clearly cheese, I mean, in the book and in the slideshow, cheese is like such a good reason to throw a party, right? What were some of your favorite cheese parties that you went to?
Well, I think like
that might have not been like an official party, right? Like the CMI and the ACS.
I think one of the best ones was Madame Fromage in Philadelphia. She threw the Black Sabbath blue cheese party. And I guess it sounds like I'm really crazy into blue cheese now because like we talked about Rogue River Blue earlier and now I'm talking about this, but I just thought it was, you know, in the same way how during the cheese tasting club, I would go all in on one kind to see the differences. At this party, it was just wall to wall, so many different kinds of blue cheese. There was like Cabrales, which is so, as that like electric tingle to it, and spice. And then there were, you know, Stilton, Roquefort, there was like all kinds of, I brought one that was Hinman Settler, which is from Jasper Hill. It's like their classic blue cheese, but mixed with, I think, sheep's milk, if I remember correctly. Anyway, so yeah, Black Sabbath and blue cheese, because you also were supposed to bring heavy metal records. And yeah, it was in like a cool bar in Philly. I'd barely been there, so it was fun to explore the neighborhood a little bit over that weekend. And yeah, that one was a pretty kick-ass party.
Cool. And I mean, clearly you zipped all over the world for this book. And I'm sure there were experiences that you couldn't, you know, fit into the book or write about them. What were some of those experiences? Or was there anything that didn't make it into the book?
Oh man, a lot didn't make it. Some of it for the wrong, some of it just because it was boring. And one thing was, as part of the research, I had a picture of it too. I worked some shifts as a cheesemonger, and it was really interesting to see it from that side. Like, I remember at first I was just gonna shadow. I wasn't gonna do anything. I just wanted to observe up close. And then every now and then everyone would be away from the counter except me, and a customer would come up, and I would just run away because I was like, oh, I don't want to mess this up. But someone saw me doing that and was like, you can just say, hang on a second, I'll get someone. But yeah, it was, even with the tools of, there are descriptions of each cheese on the back of a card to help you describe them and stuff. Even with that to help out, I did get a sense of how hard it is to do this job, and how much you have to know, and how much you also have to know about people, and some of it you just have to intuit what people like and what they're gonna like, and what like tactic to get them there it's gonna take. You know, and do you ask them about what event, and do you ask them about like if there's an animal that they prefer, you know, cow, goat, or sheep. So anyway, there was a lot to it. In the end, I didn't put it in the book because I thought it was a little overstuffed already at that point, and I didn't think anyone needed anything more about me. And so that was an easy cut. Another thing I was going to do in the book that I didn't get to was I was going to have a section about weed cheese. I had heard of at a ACS conference a few years ago when it was in Denver. There was a presentation about weed and cheese, and I was just like, oh, okay, I have to know everything about this. And I didn't really end up finding that much about that, but in the course of kind of researching it, I found a company called TH Cheese that makes, weed infused cheese. And they had sort of closed down shop because of some kind of legal restriction, but they still in California did these once a month events with a company called the Connoisseur Series, where they just had like weed and food events. So their most popular event was TH Cheese, and where people just came, sat down, smoked joints, and ate weed cheese. And I thought, this has to go in the book, obviously. In retrospect, I have no idea where it would have gone had I gone through it, but it ended up getting canceled. I bought tickets to go to California. I booked an Airbnb. I was all set to go. And then apparently they had like their first cancellation ever because someone had a death in the family. So yeah, I understood, but yeah, they were trying to salvage the experience for me. Someone like one of the guys from the company said, I think I have a little bit of TH cheese in my freezer. And so you can still come and like taste that. And I was like, I'll pass. But I'm still curious what it tasted like. I bet it's more that you get a nice little cheese high rather than like, oh wow, the flavor is incredible here. So yeah, those are some things that that did make it into the book.
Yeah. And obviously with COVID kind of shutting everything down, what has been your cheese outlet? How have you been eating it? Have you been, are you still doing those cheese gatherings virtually, or?
Oh, I've been trying to figure that one out. I've been trying to figure out how to do a cheese gathering. It's just so hard because you have to like get everybody to you have to get everybody to do work, and then I don't know. I'm sure it's possible. I've worked up the gumption to do it several times, and then just ended up thinking this will be so much more sad than the joyous times we had really good times. I would recommend when things get not back to normal, but to whatever the next iteration of normal is. When that happens, I recommend everybody who is interested do a cheese tasting club at a bar that will welcome you, because you'll be 9 people there or however many people there, and you will be getting drinks. So they'll be glad to have you. Get your friends there, eat a bunch of cheese and talk about it is super fun. So yeah, I haven't been doing that, like virtual cheese clubs, but I was back in New York at the beginning of the pandemic, and things were happening so fast that when I discovered the place that I worked those shifts at, and it's named almost identically to the bookshop. It's Brooklyn Larder, like
Okay.
Book Larder. When I found out they were still open as things were shutting down, I was so happy, because I was like, I can just get this comfort food that tastes so good. And I did. And then I went home and I was slicing it up carefully, and I was picking out things to go with it. And I was just like instantly in my happy place. Like the world is in full calamity outside, but I was like, just for now, I'm making this cheese plate as good as I can possibly make it. And me and Gabi are going to devour it, and we're going to have a good hour there. And that held true. That's held true like throughout the pandemic. things have obviously loosened up a bit. And so I'm no longer like, oh, thank God they're open every time I see an open cheese shop. But I still am regularly making cheese plates, and it always still delights me, even though it's been, there's fewer surprises now, definitely, than before, but same amount of delight as ever, I think.
Yeah. Well, two questions from that. One, what has been your go-to quarantine cheese or cheeses? And two, have you been keeping tabs on how COVID has, impacted the cheese industry from, the cheese shops and the cheese makers and dairy farmers?
Well, like a lot of the cheeses I talk about in the book have really stuck with me. I buy Pleasant Ridge a lot, and Pleasant Ridge Reserve. It's a Wisconsin Alpine style cheese, but it's like made in Wisconsin. And speaking of them, they just got their Rush Creek Reserve, which is their winter cheese. They got that in recently, so I've been getting that lately. And even though the book is American cheese, I'm promoting American cheese a lot. I still get a lot of the cheeses that Adam imports, which would be this Dutch or Belgian, a Belgian aged Gouda called OG Cristal. There's a cheese shop near me that carries it, and I get France 44 if anyone's in Minnesota, and it's incredible. So I get that every time I can. And what else? Those are some that I get whenever I can, and I try to get like a 3-year Shelburne cheddar if I ever see that too. Shelburne Farm, that's in Vermont.
Cool.
Oh, and the second question, well, I haven't looked in that much lately because honestly, it was just kind of like making me sad. But yeah, at first, one of the surprises for me when I was researching the book was I didn't realize how many creameries depend heavily on restaurants to keep them in business, or not to keep them, but to make up a substantial portion of their business. They sell it in bulk for them to cook with in some cases, and then they sell it for cheese plates and cheese courses. And so yeah, that's a substantial part of people's income. And without restaurants being open or only being open for delivery, people aren't like ordering a cheese plate to go. I mean, they might be, but I'm guessing. So yeah, I'd heard some stores that I like Bedford Cheese Shop in Williamsburg. They closed down permanently, and I'd heard that Jasper Hill had to sell off their herd of cows. They were just going to buy cow's milk from other local farms, which is a very cool move. But still, it's just they're like the leading independent cheese makers in America, probably. And to hear that they're having to go through extreme measures like that sets a high standard, or it just kind of like shows how tough things are. So those are some things that I noticed early on. And then I've been I've heard a bit that, and then Rogue Creamery, that whole area of Oregon, I mean, they've been devastated by wildfires. So it's been a tough year all around.
Yeah.
So I wish I could end this moment by saying that things are turning around and getting way better. But instead of that, I will just urge everybody to buy good cheese from your local creamery. And these places, they need your business. And you can feel good about helping to keep them afloat. And I mean, you're going to like the cheese. So win-win.
Yeah. Amen. And I have to ask, why'd you title the book American Cheese?
Well,
I feel like that's such a clever title.
yeah, it was kind of a placeholder, to be honest. There was another placeholder as a joke, like my last book, which was about the world of pun competitions, is called Away with Words. And so I was joking around calling this one Away with Curds. But or you can go really punny and go AWHEY, away with curds, but never mind.
I like that one.
So American cheese was our placeholder. I thought it was pretty cool in that, it was describing what people usually think of as craft singles, but meaning it to refer to really, really tremendously good cheese. And then also it carried kind of a sense of like American cheesiness, or this is American cheese, this is America's cheese factor. I don't know. So yeah, when push came to shove, it was kind of we just kind of decided but we're just gonna go with the placeholder title. It didn't seem like I was going to come up with something that conveyed a sense of it better than that. And then it was a matter of getting the wording right for the subtitle.
Right. And I think too that there's this interesting theme of American cheese versus a European cheese, and kind of like the newcomer to the stage and the people that have been doing it for centuries. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, yeah, America is the newcomer of the world in terms of cheese. And even though we've been making it here, and in some cases making it very, very well, and we've invented some, like Monterey Jack and Colby and things like that America is known for, we haven't had any respect in the cheese world. And let's see, we were exporting our bulk cheddar because people knew they could get it cheap from America. But until Rogue River Blue won Best Blue at the World Cheese Awards in 2003, we'd never exported a cheese because it was very good. That was the first time. Before that, it just went the other way. So when Rogue River Blue won, they had to invent the paperwork in order to make that happen, to be sending our best cheese over there. And so since then we do a bit more of that, but there hasn't been a full explosion of it, even though I think the world is starting to know that we do have good cheese. It's just still very expensive, and they'll have to pay a premium for it. I think people, at least people who really know their cheese around the world, are aware in some cases, and a lot of cases not, in a shocking amount not. But some people, they're aware that America does have some good cheese, but I don't think they've just put enough of a premium on it to be like, oh, okay, I'm willing to pay for the upgrade. And that's just, that's my analysis. That may not be 100% accurate, like that last part. That's just what I've observed. But that's been the relation. But one cool thing is that, because Europeans have been making cheeses for so long, they are bound by restrictions. They have to make cheese a certain way, in certain regions and with certain techniques. And while it helps preserve what's always been great about these cheeses, I think a lot of the cheesemakers, they feel restricted by that. They can never try out a hypothesis with their cheese. And so a lot of them have fled and gone to America and become like rock stars in America in their own right. And here, where we don't have restrictions, or the same restrictions anyway, they can experiment around and make, Alpine style cheeses with one slight tweak that changes the flavor profile in a way that they would never be able to get away with back in Switzerland or wherever else. So that's something really cool about American cheese, is that we have some of the best ideas from around the world, but with an American flair to it. And between that and the community, like seeing the tightness of the community, that was probably the most amazing part of this journey for me, was just finding something that gave me such a sense of American pride at this moment. We don't have to get into anything beyond the cheese world right now, but you know, I tend to be a pretty cynical person in the best of times, and you know, hasn't been the greatest of times that much lately. So seeing a thing in America that I could just be super proud of, and that I could, you know, evangelize and be like, hey, everybody, this is something about America that is awesome, and you may not be aware of it. That was so cool, and it's still cool right now.
Right. And I think part of the work too is growing awareness of American cheese within the US, right? I mean, we've gotten to a point where it's like you can't have a party without a cheese plate, but how do we get people to kind of start buying cheese not exclusively at like Trader Joe's or and I think there's a lot of work to be done there too, and growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that Trader Joe's cheese, I'm not trying to diss people who do that.
I think Whole Foods is actually seriously helping do that, because they have some of the best cheeses in the country and in the world in some cases, that they just make sure are in every single shop. So you may not be near an amazing cheese shop wherever you are in America, but you're probably somewhat close to a Whole Foods. And if that's the case, then you can have access to amazing American cheese, American artisan cheese. And it might not be cut from the wheel. Like when you get it, it might be prepackaged already, but it'll still be like leagues above grocery store cheese in most cases.
Yeah. And speaking of American cheese and spirit, with Thanksgiving coming up, do you know what some of the cheeses you're going to be getting? Will there be cheese on your Thanksgiving Day?
I mean, a new classic that I've already mentioned is the Rush Creek Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
It's the American takeoff of something called Vacherin Mont d'Or. And so the Swiss cheesemakers in the summertime, early in the summer, they bring their cows to the top of a mountain, and they make their cheeses at that specific climate, and they make amazing Gruyere cheese, which I love. And then at the end of the summer, they bring their cows down, and they don't feed them off pasture cheese. They feed them hay because they have to keep them in the barn because it gets so damn cold that they just can't keep them outside. And the hay makes such a difference from the amazing grass up in the mountains, that they produce a completely different kind of milk. They have their winter milk, and that winter milk tends to be fattier based on some proteins in the hay. And so yeah, that cheese they end up making Vacherin Mont d'Or, which is kind of a thick oval, and it's spoonable cheese. But the American version, you can either get Harbison or Winnemere from Jasper Hill. Those are great, and those were actually around before Rush Creek Reserve. But like I said, no lack of competitiveness. Matteo Keller of Jasper Hill helped Andy Hatch of Uplands create Rush Creek Reserve. But yeah, if you get one of these, you cut the top off like a sardine can, and you heat it up in your fridge. I'm not even gonna try to give you the specs because there's no good. I've not found one best practices for heating it. You just kind of got to go by feel. But yeah, you heat it for a while and you take it out, and it is like the perfect cheese thing to have for Thanksgiving. Even if it's just a Thanksgiving for two, you will be loving it. Just dipping in, I don't know, crispy bread or something like that. Crispy bread, whatever. A crust of bread, pita chips, whatever you want,
Roasted potatoes and Brussels sprouts. That's what I did one year.
Yeah.
That's
Heck
good.
yeah.
And I know that you can get their cheese directly from them. I saw Janae, who's listening, post about her little haul, and I think they're sold out, but they're selling little crocks that you can bake the cheese into, which I think is really neat.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I think we can open it up to the audience.
Ooh, before we do, you wrote
Yeah.
a book about melty cheeses. Do you have like a melty cheese pick for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, so we are spending Thanksgiving with our husband's family, and we're actually flying back to Virginia. Hopefully everything goes well. But I already placed an order for Rush Creek from across the country because I was like, we definitely need to have that. Won't be Thanksgiving without it. Other than that, I haven't really thought it through. Maybe a cheesy, creamy potato gratin would be really good.
Right. Well, I'm feeling pretty good about my pick then if you ordered the same thing.
Yeah. All right. So, I think we kind of covered this, but Dee Dee asks, where is your favorite place to buy cheese in the U.S.? And also, what is the best way to store cheese at home?
Oh, God. Favorite place in the U.S.? I'll say a very cool place is if you're in Madison, Wisconsin, there is a place called Fromagination, which as a pun person, I appreciated that one. And there are a lot of cheese shops in Madison, Wisconsin. Obviously, my plane landed, and within 40 minutes, I was eating a bag of cheese curds. It just happened. But Fromagination is incredible. Like the depth of knowledge that their mongers had, and the way the cheese is displayed, and the way the samples are laid out, was just super cool. So if anyone is near that area, and they probably know it already, but if you're having a visit to Madison, Wisconsin anytime soon, then I would recommend checking that out. Also, I don't know how many places do this, but I mentioned earlier that Bedford Cheese Shop shut down, but before they shut down, they had a system where you could go in and pick out like 5 or 6, or you could pick out some cheeses, and they would prepare it for you with some fixins and cut you a deal on like 2 glasses of wine, and you could just kind of like sort of make an afternoon out of it almost. You could go there and dine in and compare cheeses and compare how it goes with your wine with a friend, and that's so cool. And so explore your local cheese shop, because maybe they have it set up like that. Maybe they have that going too. And I just think that's a cool way to eat out that not enough people know that you can do. And what was the other question? The best way to store? I am terrible about this. I wish I had a better answer. I know there's something called a cheese grotto, and that's fairly cheap, and it seems like a very effective way if you want to go like all out on it. But just generally I just make sure that it's sealed shut, and maybe try wrapping it up and put it in Tupperware. The one thing I will say that I know for a fact: never store it in your freezer. I think people will strategize that maybe this will hold for longer, and if I don't finish this cheese, I'll eat it a month later. It will never taste anywhere close to how it tasted when you bought it, when you went bought it. So that's my one piece of advice.
Cool. I know I bought, do you know from Maticum? They make these like special cheese wrapping papers.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to buy my cheeses. I'm going to wrap all my cheeses. One, it's super hard to wrap a cheese properly. Like you watch a cheesemonger do it in the shop and they do it so fast. And I like tried to wrap this one wedge and it took me literally 15 minutes. And I was like, forget about it. So I've just been throwing mine into Tupperwares too, even though I still
There
have
is a
that whole roll.
there's a serious lack of appreciation for the skill of wrapping cheese. It
For
is
sure.
so hard. It
Yeah.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so the next question, which I think kind of goes over what you just answered, is where's a good place to buy cheese online?
Well, one place I would steer you. Okay, well, there's Zingerman's in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They're great. They have very good cheese and also little fun, quirky little animations on their website. It's kind of fun. Murray's and Cowgirl Creamery are both have like a tremendous amount of cheeses and also the amount of information on their websites. It's just a huge resource. So, you know, you could find a place that cuts you the best deal and have two tabs open and be researching in one and then shopping in the other. But if you shop at like Murray's or Cowgirl Creamery online, they just have tons and tons of information on the site. So it's super helpful.
Cool. And then for those who are in Seattle, we have a cheese shop in Pike Place Market called De Laurentiis. And what they've been doing is they've been curating different cheese boards from around the world. So you can pick like Italy or France or Spain, and you can order it for pickup or they can ship it like same day shipping. So that's a way to support a local cheese shop for those who are in Seattle. Janae in the chat says wrapping cheese in parchment paper and putting in a Ziploc with a tiny bit of air.
I knew someone was going to have a much better answer than the one I can provide. I know embarrassingly little about that, considering I just read a book about cheese.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so Denise asks, what was something you learned from a cheesemaker you met while writing the book that you'd like to share? I'm sure there's a
you know, most of the important stuff is in the book, and you know, I'll just pick something that is in the book. But I like that cheesemakers, that their friendship will often extend to their R&D process. Like, I don't know, just hearing about how some cheeses were created, it seemed to come down to two friends who know their stuff and sometimes have a little bit more expertise in this type of cheese or that. And they'll get together and they'll hang out around a vat of cheese and they'll just, you know, troubleshoot it. And I thought that was just such a cool thing. And I think that just gives you a little like window into the world, the craftsmanship that goes into it and the community aspect of it. And then also the experimental nature and willingness to try new things and push boundaries and whatnot. Yeah, if I had to think about longer, I'd probably come up with a better thing. But that was something I only found out through like actually hanging out with cheesemakers. I didn't find that in any book, and you know, it was like an anecdotal thing from, you know, hanging out with multiple cheesemakers and just drilling them with more questions than they were ready for.
Yeah, and I feel like that speaks to this idea of community in that in the cheese industry, right? And everyone's so supportive. All right, so one last question before we wrap up from Roxana. What's one of the more unusual cheese combinations you've had but works, like your marshmallow fondue situation?
Well, when I was at the American Cheese Society's annual conference and competition, there was a party I went to there where somebody put blue cheese in the guacamole.
Mm.
And
I read in the book and I was like, ooh, I don't know about that.
I mean, you know, I was like, I looked at it and I was like, nope, like, why do that, you know? And, but, you know, I wasn't not going to try it. Let me just make one thing clear. I would have tried anything for this book. I wanted to fly to this part of Spain that has the maggot cheese. I forget what that's called.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I used to have perfect recall of what it was called, but yeah, I ended up interviewing Andrew Zimmern of Bizarre Foods, the TV show, because I knew he'd tasted like 2 kinds of it. So that's another thing that got cut from the book. It was all my weird cheeses material. But anyway, yeah. So I would have been willing to do that. That's a side note. So yeah, if I'm willing to do that, I'm obviously going to try the blue cheese guacamole, and I did, and it was. I don't know if anyone has seen. I mean, I'm sure some people have seen the kombucha TikTok, where the woman drinks the kombucha and she makes the face like, I can't even do it. But that was my exact reaction. I was like, nope, this is, oh yeah, well, that's,
not bad.
Yeah. I don't know if I necessarily recommend it, but Caso Marzu, thank you, Sarah Aducci. Yeah, from Sardinia, that's the part. That's Italy, not Spain. My details are running together. But yeah, so I don't know if I necessarily would recommend blue cheese and guacamole, but it surprised me with how palatable and, you know, dare I say, kind of tasty it was.
Yeah. That's part of the fun of cheese, right? You don't know what the next combination, the magical combination, is always elusive.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah, you know, like I said, you know, I get less surprised these days because I've had so many kinds of cheese by now. But one question I asked everybody was, do you still get surprised by cheese? And the answer was always yes. Everybody still sometimes tastes one. They're like, this is the headbanger boogie. People will just really, you know, they still get surprised. You know, there's so many kinds in the world, and there will be new ways to make them forever. And it's really cool. And cheese, check it out. That's my final thought,
awesome.
probably.
American cheese. What is this? American cheese. Well, with that, I think we're going to have to wrap things up. But Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me this afternoon, or I guess evening, wherever I don't even know where you're tuning in from.
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, yeah. And thank you to all of our attendees who tuned in. Again, you can buy American cheese from Booklarder, and we will be posting this chat on our YouTube channel in the next few days. So
thank you for having me. This was great.
Yeah. Have a good night.
All right, you too.